Hello, this is a video explaining how to use Excel and particularly the conditional formatting option to check data that's been double entered into an Excel spreadsheet where each entry should correspond with the other. So this is a data checking process. So before we use conditional formatting, there's a few things we're going to have to do and some things it's just useful to do. So the first thing it's useful to do is always have the columns on the screen that you need or are useful to see. So in our case, it would always be useful to see the first row and this, the fourth column. And we're not particularly interested in these three columns in this analysis, so we could delete them, but we're just going to keep them there and freeze them as well. So if I scroll down as it is, we'll see that we lose the top column and we lose the ID number. So all I need to do is select the cell below the row I want to keep and to the right of the column I want to keep on the screen. And then in View, I select Freeze Panes and then freeze panes. So this has now frozen the top row and the first four columns, so we can scroll through and see that they remain on the screen. The next thing we're going to want to do is sort our data by ID number. The moment we're sorted by input code. So we simply select the ID number column, go back to the Home tab, and then select Sort and Filter, smallest to largest. We do want to expand the selection, so that's fine. We just click Sort. So now the data is sorted numerically in an ascending order, and we can see that we have what looks pretty good. Looks like everything has been double entered, nothing's been missed, and nothing's been put in 3 times. The next thing we're going to do before we start conditional formatting is just add an additional icon to the toolbar here, and I'll explain why as we do it. So if we click on File, Options, Quick Access Toolbar, here we need to select all commands. And from all the commands, we're looking for something called paste formatting. So here we are. Now what this does is it adds the formatting from the copy cell, but not the content. So if we click OK, we'll see that this has now been added to the toolbar. It's grayed out because we haven't got anything selected in the spreadsheet. One more thing before we start formatting, conditional formatting, is I find it quite useful to wrap text on this top row. This means when the questions get longer, we can see the whole thing, which makes it useful for data checking. Okay, so first thing we want to do is check whether this cell is identical to this cell. We can see that for ourselves, but it's going to take forever to manually do that across the spreadsheet. So in conditional formatting, we select for a new rule, and we're going to use a formula to determine which cells to format, so we can ignore all the other options. And in this dialog box, we want to click on the cell that we're in, and then we want to say if that cell equals the cell below it, we'd like Excel to turn that cell let's go for it. But you can change the border or the font or all sorts of things. Before we click OK, we just need to go through and delete these dollar signs. And this means that the formula can then be used with reference to relative cells rather than absolute ones. So if we now click OK, we'll see that this cell has indeed turned orange because its content matches the target cell. We now need to do the opposite. So we need to create another new rule using a formula. But for this formula, we want to say if this cell, click in the dialog box first. If this cell equals this cell, then again, turn it orange. And once again, just as before, deleting out these dollar signs. For some reason you can't use the cursor in this dialog box, and I think it's because the cursor is looking for movements in the spreadsheet rather than the dialog box, so we have to use the mouse to do that. Click OK. And we can see now that this formula this cell has also gone orange because its content does match the one above. So that's really as simple as conditional formatting is. What we need to do now is copy those 2 cells, select all the cells we wish to apply that formula to. I've stripped this data file down a little bit just so this process doesn't take too long. And rather than pasting, we're going to use this button to paste the formatting. So as we can see, all the cells in this column have now gone orange, which is excellent. It does mean that what we plan to do has happened, and every every participant has been entered twice. You can apply this formula to any cell. We're just going to look at the test result, but it might be worth applying it to date of birth and date of testing, and even classroom to see if they all correspond. So what we're going to do, we've still got these two cells selected and they're in the clipboard. So we're just going to select every other cell we wish to apply this formula to. Now in previous videos this has taken quite a long time, but I've reduced the number of cells we're looking at, so hopefully it'll be nice and quick. Again, paste formatting, it will need to think about it for a while. But what we should see is that almost all our cells have gone orange. There are a few where this hasn't happened, and these are the ones that will need to be checked. So that has worked perfectly. Now there is one slight thing to be taken into consideration, and that is that conditional formatting considers a 0 and a blank cell as being the same value. So some of these tests are scaled 0 to 3, which means that 0 is a meaningful value for us. So we can see a discrepancy between 0 and 1 there, but let's just delete the content of that cell. This is still discrepant. Somebody's missed their data and somebody else has put in a 0, but Excel is showing us that these match, which means we wouldn't spot these when data checking. So to deal with that, what you do is you select those cells for which the scale runs 0 to 3, and in this case it's these scores here that I've selected. You can actually see that I've already done this on this spreadsheet, so I should have undone this before making the video, but you can see what I've done, and that is to turn a blank cell, to make a blank cell say check. So we're going to do that now. If you press Ctrl F, it opens up a find window. From here you can click replace, and all we're going to do is replace a blank cell with check. Replace all, only for these selected scores that run from 0 to 3. Now you can see that it's turned a lot, it's put check into a lot of these cells. And for almost all of them, you need to go through and manually delete them. Because either they're both blank and they don't need checking against each other, or one's blank and one has a value, for example here, in which case it would be checked. So what this leaves us with, are cells like this and this, where previously they would have looked like a matched pair, but now because we've put in check, we can see that somebody's entered a 0 and somebody hasn't, the second person hasn't entered anything. So we can now check those. So I think that's everything to be done with conditional formatting. Looking at the data file, there are things that you can do quite easily. For example, here, these meanings yes and no will have no value to SPSS, so you can do things when you're looking at the data file. Control F, replace yes with 1, yes with 1, and replace no with 2. But these are things that you can aren't anything to do with the data checking process. Okay, so I hope that all makes sense. And there'll be another video as well which will explain how to turn the file back into something useful once it's been checked. Thank you very much.